You zip a jacket, a bag, a pair of jeans, and you never think twice about it. On a scale of 1 to 7, people rate their understanding of how a zipper works at nearly 7. Nearly perfect. Then researchers ask them to explain it step by step, and the average rating falls to about 4. Not because they suddenly lost information, but because they never had it in the form they thought they did. This collapse has a name: the illusion of explanatory depth. And it does more than expose your relationship with zippers. It shapes how you vote, how you learn, and what you think you know about nearly everything. The experiment that uncovered this illusion is deceptively simple. In 2002, psychologists Leonid Rozenblit and Frank Keil asked people to rate how well they understood the workings of everyday devices: a zipper, a toilet, a helicopter, a cylinder lock. Participants gave high scores, usually 6 or 7 on the 7-point scale. Then the researchers asked them to do something unusual. Instead of demonstrating how to use the object, they had to write out, step by step, the causal mechanism that makes it work. How does that lever in the toilet actually send water upward? What exactly happens inside the lock when you turn the key? Most people produced short, vague, and often wrong accounts. Many gave up entirely, and when they rated their understanding again, the scores had dropped sharply. What happened in those minutes? The first rating measured something we can call recognition. You have seen a zipper close thousands of times. You have pulled the tab, felt the teeth mesh, maybe heard the click. Your brain reads that history of experience as knowledge. The second rating measured something else entirely: production. Could you actually generate the causal chain from scratch? The gap between recognition and production is the illusion of explanatory depth. And the structure of the zipper makes it a perfect trap, because the mechanism is completely hidden. The slider looks simple, but inside it is a wedge-shaped channel that forces 2 lines of teeth into a specific interlocking position. You cannot see it, so your mind never bothers to model it. Here is where the number hides something. The drop from 7 to 4 is not a measure of how much you lost. It is a measure of how wrong your internal model was. You do not have a degraded copy of the zipper's schematic in your head. You have something closer to a summary. A 1-line description. The tab pulls, the teeth meet. That is why the explanation attempt feels so strange. You are not forgetting details. You are discovering that the details were never stored in the first place. It is like opening a file folder you assumed was full and finding a single index card. So why did the brain store only an index card? The mechanism becomes clearer when you look at what knowledge is actually for. For most of your daily life, you do not need to know how a zipper works. You need to know that it works and what input produces what output. Pull, closed. Push, open. That is the entire model you need to get dressed. Your brain is an energy budgeter. It does not store causal models it has never had to use. The illusion of explanatory depth is not a bug in your memory. It is a feature of your planning. You only encode what the environment demands you be able to reproduce. And a zipper never demands anything from you except a pull. But here is the strange part. The same illusion shows up in places where the stakes are much higher than getting dressed. Researchers have found the pattern with mental models of natural phenomena, like why seasons change, with medical knowledge, like how vaccines work, with financial systems, like how a mortgage functions, and critically with public policy. People rate their understanding of complex proposals, say a healthcare system or a carbon tax, just as highly. They feel confident they know what the policy does. But when asked to explain the actual mechanism by which the policy would produce its effects, their confidence collapses the same way. Except now, the gap has consequences for millions of people. This is where Philip Fernbach's work picks up the thread. Fernbach and his colleagues took the illusion of explanatory depth out of the lab and into the voting booth. They asked people about controversial policies, issues like gun control and single-payer healthcare. First, participants rated their understanding of the policy. Then they wrote an explanation of the causal chain. How does this rule change behavior, and how does that behavior change produce the outcome? Then they rated their understanding again. The pattern was identical to the zipper study. Confidence fell, often dramatically. But then the researchers added a twist. Participants were given the chance to read expert opinions, including opinions from the opposing side. After the explanation exercise, people were less likely to hold extreme positions and more willing to engage with policies that conflicted with their own. The implication is uncomfortable. A lot of your political confidence may be built on the same mental index card as your zipper knowledge. You have a stance, a strong stance perhaps, but the causal machinery underneath it is thin. The problem is not that you have opinions. You probably should. The problem is that you cannot tell the difference between an opinion grounded in mechanisms and an opinion grounded in feeling. The illusion of explanatory depth hides that difference. It lets a strong moral intuition masquerade as a detailed technical understanding. And that makes you overconfident in debate, resistant to new information, and easy to manipulate with a confident-sounding explanation from someone else. But the illusion has limits, and finding them tells you something useful. You are far less likely to fall for it with things you have actually built or broken. Take a person who has repaired their own bicycle. They may still rate themselves highly, but their explanation will be detailed, and their confidence holds up under questioning. Physical manipulation, disassembly, trial and error, these create the causal model that passive use never does. The same effect appears with teaching. If you have ever had to explain a concept to a student or a colleague, you know the moment when your own gaps surface. Teaching forces production, and production instantly reveals whether you had a model or just a label. There is a second limit as well. The illusion is strongest for mechanical and causal systems where the hidden parts are small and the visible behavior is smooth. It is weaker for things you experience directly at the level of mechanism. Think about riding a bicycle. Most people who ride one cannot explain the physics of the gyroscopic effect in detail, but they do hold a deep, accurate, procedural knowledge of how to steer at speed. The ride itself is the explanation. The point is that procedural knowledge and explanatory knowledge are different currencies. You can be excellent in the first and bankrupt in the second. And unfortunately, our culture, education, and politics increasingly demand the second while we keep paying with the first. Consider what this means for learning. The illusion of explanatory depth is a hidden tax on education because it tells you, falsely, that you already understand. When you finish a video or an article and feel that click of comprehension, you are often feeling recognition, not production. The knowledge is on the screen, and briefly, it feels like it is in your head. Within days, the details are gone, but the feeling of knowing remains. That is why so many people read, watch, and listen, and yet change so little of their actual behavior. They have received recognition without production. The fix is uncomfortable and simple. After you learn something, close the source and try to explain it aloud to an imaginary student. If you cannot reach the mechanism, you do not yet know it. Let me be clear about what the evidence does not say. The illusion of explanatory depth is not a claim that people are stupid, or that everyday knowledge is worthless, or that you should be able to explain everything you use. That way lies paralysis. You cannot personally reconstruct the zipper, the power grid, the supply chain, and the immune system. A modern life is built on trusting millions of mechanisms you will never understand. The illusion merely names the specific spot where your own internal map goes quiet. And knowing the location of that spot changes how you should talk, listen, and decide. It is the difference between a person who says, "I know," and a person who asks, "Wait, do I actually know?" Here is the number from the opening, and what it truly hides. The drop from 7 to 4 is not a story about memory loss. It is a story about the difference between a summary and a mechanism. And that difference does not just apply to zippers. It applies to your explanations of your own opinions, to your confidence in the news you share, to your belief that you understand how a policy will change the world. When you feel that click of certainty, the honest move is not to suppress it. It is to run a small test. Explain it to yourself, out loud from scratch. If the words stop at the surface, your confidence was recognition wearing a mask. The zipper closes almost perfectly, and you never see the latch that holds it. That is the design that gets you dressed in the morning, and it is also a warning. Your own understanding has latches like that, small internal mechanisms that hold your thoughts together. You cannot see them from the outside. The only way to know they hold is to try to pull them apart. The illusion of explanatory depth ends exactly where your own explanation begins. And the number that measured the illusion, 7 to 4, is nothing more than the distance between thinking you knew and knowing you can find out.